Hello, 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 hello. Good to see everybody this morning. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to roll in like we normally do. If you want to, I always like to have people check in the chat with where they're from and what the weather's like. Uh, I'm going to speak out loud because I have the floor anyway and say I'm in Portland, and it's actually been sunny here the last like 2 or 3 days for the first time in a very long time. And it's going to be in the 60s today, and I'm going to be spending the afternoon working in the yard because anyway,
That
glad that you're here.
that sounds amazing, Daniel. It is actually very sunny in Colorado, but also cold. It's cold Dorado. We got about 5 inches of snow on Thursday, and most of it's gone now.
Man,
But it's going to be maybe 70 on like Tuesday, and then it's going to snow again on Thursday.
Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut originally. Grew up there. Cool. Spring is at the door.
Thank goodness.
Ready for it. Definitely enjoying the light till 7 o'clock already thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. As much as I dislike losing the hour, I certainly enjoy having the sun stay around later every day. So it's just the cross we must bear as long as we continue to have this crazy daylight savings time thing going on.
And for anyone that just joined, we are giving everybody else a few minutes to arrive. If you'd like to say where you're from in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, feel free, what the weather's like, what brought you here. And then we'll get started in a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll get started another minute or two here.
So I came across you guys on LinkedIn. I was updating my information and I saw the virtual death doula network, and I got to reading your page, and I just kind of blew my mind. Like, this is just a fantastic idea.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for letting us know you found us on LinkedIn. We're Daniel, Inti, and I are not necessarily the most social media navigators. So that's great to know that we really appreciate that feedback. And Shelly, can you fit me in your suitcase? Shelly is taking an ocean cruise from Athens to Venice. That sounds amazing.
All right, I think I'm gonna get us. Oh, there's another one. Somebody else just showed up.
That's
Now. Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna get us started here. First, yeah, thank you for coming. I'm Daniel. I'm a doula at the Virtual Death Doula Network. I'm joined by Andrea and NT. I'll give them a chance to. Actually, would you like to introduce yourselves also before I continue? Andrea?
I'm Andrea, a doula and one of the founders of the Death Doula Network with Daniel. And the wonderful Inti.
I'm Inti, also a death doula, bilingual, and do a lot of cancer support. So if you know anyone that is experiencing that in the family, yeah, that is super hard. So.
Right. Thank you both. And thank you for putting your sort of introductions and where you're at in the chat. We'll get a chance to talk to you all in a little bit here. Anyway, today we're focusing on sort of talking about how we live and how it's influenced by our thoughts on death. I sent out some questions to everybody before we started that we're going to sort of spend some time going over before, and then I'm going to talk for a little bit, and the other doulas are going to talk for a little bit, just sort of about death and dying, and maybe a little bit of soul, and I'm going to mention the Bhagavad Gita, and then we're going to just have an open discussion about our thoughts on death, and then come back to those questions and see if anything shifted for anybody at the end. So that's what we have in store for us today. Before we get going, I traditionally like to lead a little breathing exercise to get everybody grounded and centered. I'm just going to do a pretty straightforward box breathing. For those of you who are familiar, we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and then we'll just repeat that a few times. And I will be as quiet as possible and let you count on your own, just as a change. Normally I count, but I want to try it differently this time. So take a few moments to settle in, get comfortable. Yeah, and then, if you want to, gently close your eyes or let them unfocus in front of you. And when you're ready, breathe in on 4, 3, 2, 1, and then hold for 4. Exhale, 4, 3. Hold for 4. Inhale for 4, 3. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale. Hold. Inhale, 4, 3. Hold. Exhale. And return to your normal breathing. Thank you. So glad we're all here. Yeah, let me see if there's any notes that have come up now. Everybody's all right. We're all here and ready to go. Let me bring up these questions and then we can start popcorning around. So basically, I'll comment on like one of the questions, sort of, thoughts on it, and then you call somebody else's name, when that person can then speak to it, or if they are not interested in sharing, that is quite all right too. They can stay silent or pass it on to somebody else after that. Like I said, we'll do this for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so, and then we'll go from there. So let me bring up the questions and share my screen.
And while Daniel's doing that, if you aren't comfortable speaking, but you do want to share, feel free to pop it in the chat and one of us can read it for you as well. Or we can, if you say, don't read it out loud, we can just all read it silently.
Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Did somebody say something? I thought I heard.
It's my dog, the dog.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So these are the questions that I sent out to everybody in the last day or two, talking about like, who are you? Like, that's sort of like a deeper question, trying to get away from the things that we might identify with from like a personality standpoint. Have you considered your own death? If you have, what are your thoughts? And if not, why not? How do you live your life? Like, do you have agency? Are you writing your own story, or are you kind of living somebody else's right now? Do you even, do you understand what those questions are? Do you have a sense you should be doing something different? Like, getting back to identity, what parts of your life define you? And are any of those parts that you're particularly embarrassed or ashamed of? And what will loved ones say about you after you're passing? Again, you don't have to answer any of these. You don't have to answer all of them. You can pick and choose. I'll just start and talk a little bit about that second one. Yes, I have considered my own death. I mean, as part of, sort of the focus of this is doing that. I used to be quite scared of dying, and I'll go into that a little bit more during the second part of this, and sort of how and why that changed. But since then, it's sort of the understanding that I've come to have about about death and just how it goes down, what happens, my intentions surrounding it. I like to think gives me, I don't know, clarity and a better understanding of who I am and what I'm doing here. And when I say like who I am, this does get into more to like soul type stuff. And again, I'll get into more details on that in a bit, but that's my piece on that. Before you're gonna hear me speak plenty anyway, so I'm gonna pass it off to, and I don't see all the names in front of me right now. I know Shelley's here, so I'm gonna pass it to Shelley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, if you've been on this group before, you know I've already considered my death. In fact, timing is everything. Tonight I meet with my 2 adult children to go over my last will and final wishes. Because I've chosen VSAD for my termination, if and when the time comes, I want them to know what I consider the appropriate time to do that, because voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, I have to participate, obviously, but they have to know this is the point where mom doesn't want to live. And so we're going to go over everything and give them a clarity of and an understanding. I am absolutely not afraid to die. And I told you the last month, I think, I expect to be greeted by a lot of people. I'm enjoying the thought of who will be there for me when it's time. Firmly believe that, firmly. The thing that's easiest for me to answer is what parts of my life I'm embarrassed or ashamed of. Somehow I just always bare my soul with you guys, even though we don't really know each other. We know each other well enough. But I went through a very difficult second marriage, 25 years of things that my children should never have had to live through. And had I had an ounce of brains or confidence in myself, I would have terminated that marriage much sooner. Much sooner. They saw and heard things that have affected their lives. I see it in their lives now as adults. And that's what I wish I could change. The only saving grace is I think they know that. I think they understand that I've never hidden any truth from my kids. And I think they do understand that that's where we can have a redo on life through them, that they can do it differently. My daughter is doing great at doing better than I did. My son, not so much. He's a little me, unfortunately. But what my loved ones will say, my God, my daughter already asked if she needs to rent a hall for my wake, because I have so many friends. I am so richly blessed with friends. Thank God. I'm going to popcorn over to Meg Krug.
And it is absolutely okay to pass. Shelley, thank you so much for sharing that. And also, I really want to commend you for having these conversations with your children, because it is not only the way for you to get what you need, but also it is the kindest thing you can do for them, because it takes the pressure, the concern, and the wondering off the table, and that gives a lot of peace for
I hope so.
So I really want to commend you for that. Oh, Meg is at the gym. No worries. Thank you so much for joining us from the gym. That's fantastic. Movement and grief and death go together really, really well. So no worries. I am going to popcorn over to Stacy.
Hello. So I've thought about this a lot. I think that I have always been kind of the weird child, and whenever it came to going to a loved one's funeral, it more fascinated me than anything else. Not in like a whoa, that's a dead body kind of thing, but like a oh my gosh, that person isn't here anymore. I wonder what happens to them, So I've always been kind of on that side of more curious, I would say, than anything else. And with my family experiences, helping take care of my grandfather whenever he went to rehab, or when it came to my grandmother's last day, she was in the hospital and had went straight to hospice, and within 12 hours she had passed. And in that time, seeing hospice working with her, getting to assist the hospice worker, because I was a CNA at the time, and giving her like final bath before she had gotten transported, and that had meant a lot. And because I would take care of my grandmother here too, which when she lived at my parents' house. So all of this kind of just led me down the path to be a doula. And I feel like it's just one of those things that I'm meant to do, because I'm not afraid of when my time comes. And I think it should be more of a comfortable story for people to have, just so there's not that fear and anxiety that goes along with it. So really inspired and glad to help others in making those decisions and getting them more comfortable in speaking to their friends and family regarding death. I think it's just a rare opportunity, which is just fulfilling to me.
Thank you so much, Stacy. And if you want to call on someone, feel free, or if someone feels compelled to just go for it, also feel free.
Cami, it looks like she's ready. I'll pop it to Cami.
Thank you. Who am I? I'm a curious and intense soul. That's how I've experienced myself. Others have agreed. Have I considered my own death? Yes, I have. Although I think over time we circle back and consider it in different ways. And so in retrospect, I think probably not as soberly as I am recently. Having said that, I had some brief illnesses when I was younger, and I was pretty determined that I wasn't going to die at that point, and I obviously didn't. So I don't know that I had a real full conscious awareness of I am going to die at some point. I recently participated in a living funeral ceremony, not the living funeral ceremony wherein people are celebrating with someone who is terminal, but it's more of like an experiential event where you consider your own mortality. And it came to the point where they ask you to read your last words out loud, and because this is the last time you'll hear your own voice. And so it's manufactured experience, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't read those words out loud, and it was pretty intense. And so that experience made me realize, oh, maybe I haven't really considered and confronted my mortality to the degree that I thought I had. So that's the kind of space I'm in right now. How do I live my life? Am I writing my own story? I'm in a process of reinvention. I'm definitely processing some regrets and doing a little bit of that kind of review, because I'm looking at like the last third of my life expectancy and going, how do I want that to be? And I'm trying to get a lot of clarity and precision on what's going to be part of that and what isn't going to be a part of that. So yes, I do sense that I should be doing some things differently. What parts of my life define me? I don't think I can answer that question in this short time. There have been moments that definitely marked me, but do they define me? I don't think so. Are there parts of my life that I'm ashamed and embarrassed about? Yeah, probably. I mean, there were some deep regrets when I was doing things that I thought I knew what I was doing, and I didn't realize at the time how much they would impact me. embarrassed, ashamed. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but not necessarily proud of. I'll put it that way. What would my loved ones say about you after I pass? I don't know. I think that I think they would probably say that I had a high degree of awareness and compassion, and that I lived with, a degree of truthfulness that was not comfortable for me or anybody else, but that I was committed to that. I think that's probably where it would land. Yeah. I don't see the gallery, so I don't know exactly how to pass it off to somebody else.
Okay, well, let's see. I know Meg is at the gym and Jay's driving. Laura, would you like to speak and answer any of these? Totally optional. If not, feel free to just stay silent.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
thank you for popping on.
No problem. Let's see. I'm Laura. I'm from Chicago. I'm 39 years old. I'm a hairdresser, and I was really interested in becoming a doula. Hang on, let me take my headphones. The microphones in. And I had been through a lot of trauma myself, and I had witnessed a few passings, and I ended up going to school for funeral service education as well, and I graduated from that in 2015, as well as I just recently took a course for death doula and I got a certification, but just felt like this was something that would help me understand life. You learn so much about life, and you don't learn that much about death. And I had to help my husband recently through his father passing away, and it's just something that has come to me naturally. So I've considered my own death. I grew up with suicidal ideology, and other than that, I just wanted to understand why I felt that way, and I wanted people to understand that it's going to happen to us all. But it's just I have compassion and empathy for people. I um, had near-death experience in 2021 where I ended up being hospitalized, and my roommate passed away in front of me. And I just felt like I was there to experience that, and I was going to help her family through it. And it was just, this was my calling. I felt like it was my destiny. I live my life, I'm an artist, I'm a hairdresser, I love music, I love to paint, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and would I be doing anything different? No. I went through life, and everybody has their own struggles, and I sat there and wrote a book about it, and I'm like, you know what? This is something that, should be everybody should learn about this. It's you need somebody there for you when this happens. What parts of my life define me? The fact that I'm a caregiver, and I women brought people into this world, we take them out too. you know um I'm very poetic. I love to read about the industry, and if I pass, my loved ones will probably say she lived a very interesting life, and she cared for everyone. And I want everybody to feel that you're loved. And as being an artist, one of my things is I wanted to donate my body to science, and whatever's left over, they'll cremate and mix with some paint and put on a portrait, and that'll be my last masterpiece. But I still have a lot of time in between then. And so until then, I'm going to do hair and makeup on my loved ones for free when they pass. And other than that, I'm here for the ride. So I'm learning, this is all new to me, and it's a very interesting learning experience. And so, ta-da, that's it.
Well, thank you. And I think that's lovely. And I think it's lovely that you have a plan, an idea for how you'd like to create that final masterpiece. I think that's
Yes.
fantastic. I think I'm actually going to share a little bit, just because I've been going through some pretty intense grief. I had to say goodbye to my beloved dog about a week and a half ago. And
Sorry to
it
hear.
wasn't until now that I realized that in some extent, I was not living my own life. He was an incredibly special needs dog. He could not be left alone. And this was before he was sick. And then when he was sick, I was hand feeding him every 90 minutes, and my entire life was consumed by my routine with my dog and my best friend. And now that we are both free, so to speak, I realized I was kind of living his story a little bit more than mine. And it's been a little bit of a struggle to find what's my routine. Who am I in this earth without this being? And I think that I've experienced similar things as well with people, but it's been particularly profound with my dog. And it was interesting to me that I didn't really realize how much of not writing my own story was happening, because I was simply dog. And now here I am, and I have a wide, beautiful, open page that I get to recreate. So that's pretty exciting. And I feel like the parts of my life that define me are the other side of the coin to the things that maybe are embarrassing or shameful for me. I have a giant, big, beautiful, messy heart, and I am very comfortable with my emotions, and I'm a very emotional person. I do not tend to keep those emotions in. I cry a lot, and I love a lot, and I love really, really big. And I think that is without a doubt the thing that would define me, but also it's been the thing in the past more so than now that I've been embarrassed of or ashamed of, or felt like I needed to make myself small somehow for having these really big feelings. And now I feel good about these big feelings. And I've found some new ways to work with them. And we're going to get into that a little bit more with Daniel.
Yeah, I think we still have one more. Inti, do you want to share? I think you're the only, did I miss that? Or I believe that you're still the outstander if you would like to pipe in at this point.
I thought I almost got away with not having to think about who I was. Dang it. Yeah. Oh yeah, and Stacy as well. Yeah, I'll popcorn.
Sorry, Stacy.
Did you already share, Stacy? Okay. Yeah, the who I am one is, I'm just gonna skip that one and think about that one more in depth, but I have considered my own death. I kind of got into end of life care through being a hospice volunteer, and there's this really beautiful and terrifying moment when you are used to externalizing death, like this is happening to this person, and then you kind of realize, oh, right, that's gonna happen to me. And so I've really shifted a lot in the past year about like how I orient to my own life, like what defines me. And I realized that like whatever we say to other people, like we have to follow that ourselves. And so if I'm telling people they should talk to their family about what they want for the end of their life or what they don't want, like, am I doing that in my life? And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of maybe not. And so I think just like really letting the work that I do transform me first, and then everything that I interact with will then be transformed, as opposed to treating transformation like it's this thing that I carry. It's like a part of who I am. And so what I want to define me is like changing. I think maybe a few years ago, I would have been like, I want people to say that like I helped so many people and that I was so giving. And I actually want people to remember me as like, wow, she really like loved herself and she had like a good time while she was here. And of course the helping and stuff is a part of it, but I don't want that, especially as a woman, to be the only thing that defines me. I want to like really fully enjoy my life. And not that you can't do that with helping, but there's this like separate part for me that's just like, sometimes I don't want to help anybody, and I just want to eat some ice cream and get to watch a movie. And, you know, I don't feel a lot of embarrassment or shame in this moment. It's probably like deep down in there. But I really hope that when I pass, people look back and say that I did my best to be happy myself. And that was contagious, because I believe that if we are transformed, then that's just going to like touch everyone else around us. So at least I'm trying that on for the next year. We'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Thanks, Cindy. And thank everybody for sharing. I really appreciate everyone going into whatever you chose to share with us. And now, like I said, I'm going to talk just a little bit about dying and the observer self in general. And some of this has come out of some yoga teacher training that I'm doing right now. I got to read the Bhagavad Gita for the first time this year, and it was very, very interesting. You know, it talks about, as the dweller in the body experiences, in our body, we experience childhood, youth, and old age, and then we pass on to another body. Saying that, you know, just as certain is death for the born and certain is birth for the dead, and it's just a continuing cycle, and over the inevitable you should not grieve. And that's sort of like the basic position that the Gita puts forward. But people have been reading this for many, many years, but still grieving over dying and still being incredibly afraid of it. Most of us try to keep any thoughts about death kind of far away, especially thoughts about our own death, because if there is something that's unsettling for us as humans, it's contemplating our own mortality. Maybe not necessarily this group that we have here today, but oftentimes our deepest fears and anxieties do concern our survival. And while we may be willing to talk about death in sort of like an abstract way, we're often not all that thrilled to bring it up close and personal. We don't really want to really allow it to hit us where we might really feel it. So in order to maybe try to personalize it, I'll talk a little bit more, share about some of my experiences that led me to change my own perceptions about death, which I sort of mentioned at the beginning. And then, give you the chance to talk about your own again at the end of this. For a long time, I was used very much to seeing my personality and my body as real. That's what was real. And that was it. That was the only thing that was real. And I believe that when you died, you were dead. And that was it. And so there wasn't a whole lot to be done about it other than enjoy life while as best you can and try not to think about it, deny, avoid. But well, ultimately, the process of dying is about like letting go. And part of my healing and coming around from that mindset I had included things like psychedelic experiences, which is certainly an opportunity and has become a practice for me of letting go. On the rare occasions that I still do that, I sort of like use psilocybin to have sort of like little mini inoculations to practice letting go, with the idea that when the big one comes, I'll be better able to stay conscious and present for that experience. Because and as far as and obviously this will help shed fear associated with these things also. Like there's, demonstrated studies that show that people who have done psychedelics or meditated for several years, all these are experiences that enable us to have much less stress and anxiety surrounding death and dying than the population. And I'm sure that anybody that's done a lot of meditation or the occasional psychedelic would be able to, you can validate that for yourself. I mean, really the toughest things about death are pain. It's not there's probably going to be pain associated with it, and even still fear, even being prepared, there's still potentially fear. And if we are prepared, if we are conscious, that the pain and fear are just going to be overwhelming and confusing, and we will get lost in them. And so we need strategies for approaching them as we get close to death. And when we meditate, that gives it, but we can meditate and get better about being with pain. If we do have a backache or legs hurt or whatever, meditation enables us to sort of like step back, and this is where we get into like the observer a little bit, and we can sort of acknowledge the pain without getting caught up in it. Like my own experience, like my mother died when I was in high school. And as she got closer to dying, I got to sort of witness the process for the first time. But I was still, you know, a teenager at the time, and still quite rooted in my materialism. And I also was, you know, in our culture which was obsessed with pushing away death and not acknowledging it. And so like when the dust cleared from all that, I was sort of like more rooted in my materialism and more terrified of dying than I ever had been. It wasn't until like I became, you know, over the course of the next couple of decades, I became very ill because I had pushed down and rejected my grief. But at that point, I needed to get that ill in order to start healing, and that healing included practices like meditation and yoga and the occasional psychedelic, and that sort of enabled me to step back and start recognizing that although the body may die, the soul does not. The soul continues. And sort of like getting back into even like, you know, thinking about yoga and letting go and releasing, like most yoga classes, we end with Shavasana, corpse pose, which is just sort of like another mini practice, mini exercise of releasing physical, mental clinging. And so like all these are just sort of practices. Like when I get to the point where I think about when I've died, I want to be able to die consciously and be as present as possible. I mean, they've got the whole Tibetan Book of the Dead, which theoretically you get, you know, they've got these monks that will read this for 49 days after somebody dies, basically to sort of like guide them through dying. I mean, I don't know if, you know, I don't think I need anything quite like that, but it would be interesting to have somebody like maybe a doula who could, you know, be with me to stay present and help me stay conscious and aware when I might otherwise be distracted by the pain and fear that might be coming through me at that point. Yeah, and sort of, okay, so like one of the practices that we could possibly start getting into in order to enable us to step back and recognize ourselves as the soul that we are, that may continue after our death, is sort of being an observer, developing a practice to witness what's going on in us, as opposed to being and sort of getting caught up with what's going on within us. So this sort of winds up being sort of a creation of the intellect, so we can sort of detach from activities happening without any judging or comparing. Like this is sort of like one of the challenges with this. The witness wants to be completely unaligned, have no opinions on what's happening. It just wants to see, and that's it. Try not to project or anything. And this is challenging. Like this takes time, and we can have these moments of consciousness, but more often than not, we're just sort of stuck doing our automatic mechanical stuff and getting pulled one way or another way by desires, emotions, and that's fine. That's perfect. That's exactly where we're at on our path. But as we're able to sort of like cultivate this witnessing, we can start learning to step back and sort of noticing what's going on in us without necessarily, you know, again, judging it, but just sort of seeing. You know, so if we like say we reflexively eat something and then like get on us, you know, then kind of like put ourselves down for doing it, like there's opportunities right there. Like if we can pull back to the witness, we can just witness, oh, me, whoever is eating, and now, oh, I'm putting myself down, but like that's not even judging that, not even judging the judging. You have to sort of like step back from the judging as well, if that makes sense. And this is something that like these are practices that we could do almost you know, all the time if we're aware, but like that's sort of the challenge, is sort of getting into sort of recognizing like brushing your teeth or eating or walking the dog. These are all opportunities, but it's difficult, it's challenging. Like once we actually you know, sort of get to the point where we're able to notice it, like that's a big deal. Like it's like theoretically more and more you'll be able to recognize slipping out of this witness and going back into it, but it takes time and practice. But once you're able to do that and sort of separate back that observer, that when I say who are you, that observer is really who we are internally. That's what's going to continue after we die and everything like that. And that's sort of why the importance of starting to cultivate this practice now, because it will get us more in touch with who we actually are. It'll give us tools to better navigate the ups and downs of life, and also make us better prepared when it's finally time to move on. And I think that's probably, I feel like I've rambled enough on this topic. So like I said, this is sort of inspired by readings from the Bhagavad Gita. I also dipped into a book that Ram Dass wrote on the subject called Paths to God, Living the Bhagavad Gita, but I'm gonna be quiet at that point, because I feel like I've spoken enough for for this. And like I said, I'm going to eventually bring up those questions, but like, does anybody have any thoughts? Like, where are you at on this? Like, this is something that I obviously spent some time on, and like I still, like, I struggle with that. Like, the whole concept about being the observer is something that, it takes work, it takes practice. It is not something that it's certainly not automatic for me, but it's certainly also something that I'm aware of and try to engage in when I remember to do so, and then giving myself compassion for when I forget, which is often. So that's what I wanted to say. I guess we're going to sort of do like a mini popcorn before we bring those things back up. Andrew, you're already unmuted. I'm going to let you, I think you wanted to talk a little bit more about the observer self anyway, so I'm going to shut up now.
Well, I appreciate it. The observer self has been a practice that I have to say has saved my life in a lot of ways, and has, I mentioned before that the thing that sometimes I was ashamed about or embarrassed was my big, messy emotions, and sometimes my inability to control them within myself, and not outside, not in public, not with other people, but purely within myself. And I would get so enmeshed in these emotions that I would become completely overwhelmed and immobilized and lost in myself and in my emotions. And when I found the practice of the observer self, it didn't take my emotions away, but it gave me the ability to recognize them as emotions and have an awareness for them and to care for them. So instead of, even with this, my dog, I've been experiencing overwhelming grief, but I can say to myself, instead of just being the overwhelming grief and spiraling out and being completely out of fucking control, because that is how it felt for me, I can say, you know what? I am really sad right now. I am grieving. My heart hurts. It feels tight in my throat. It hurts in my stomach. I feel sick. And I can name all those things for myself. And in doing so, it doesn't take them away, but it does take some of the charge away and some of that power of the kind of getting swept away in it. And it rather creates space for me to be with those emotions so I can move through them. Because a lot of times for me, I would get so spiraled out in them, they weren't going anywhere. I'm just looping in a endless sobbing fit. And I cry all the time, so I'm all about it, but purposefully. Like when I'm my observer self and I can cry about these things, I can also make some sense about it. It's happening. It's who I am at the moment, but it doesn't define me. Feelings and emotions aren't facts. So even though at the moment I might feel like the world is swallowing me whole, if I can step back into my observer self, I can see right now is a hard moment, but it's just right now. And in fact, if I can get really present in that moment, even if it's hard, I actually find the awareness that I am okay. And that is the most beautiful gift of the observer, is that even amidst the most intense, painful, challenging emotions, you are okay. And like Daniel said, it's a practice. There are some times where I got to kind of be like, hey, Andrea, let's take a step back and look at what is it? What am I feeling? Instead of getting so crazy overwhelmed, let me name it. Let me name these emotions and invite them to be with me. And so it's just been an incredibly powerful practice for me, and not just with grief, but life in general, whenever it gets overwhelming. Cammie, would you like to pop in and say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to you speak, and I'm trying to, weigh where where I sit with that. It's beautiful to have that awareness of like the size and depth of your emotion. And I'm riffing off of what Daniel was speaking about in terms of how he's using the lens of yogic practice and tradition. I used to be a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, and so I can relate to that, discipline and history there and culture to examine and use as tools for these things. I mean, certainly if you want to simplify it and just look at the breath, it's like your first breath is you're inspired, you're inspired to live, and you expire with your last breath. It's as simple as the breath. It's the same continuum. There's no separation there. So that's an interesting thing. But I'm struck as I'm listening to everybody, I'm struck with a reminder about the tension that we live in. Not everyone has this belief. I can share and confess that I believe that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and that there's a tension there. And so all of this stuff belongs. Like, one is not more preferable than the other, and one is in a better place, although it might be temporarily a better place for you to experience your life than it was 10 years ago, or it will be 15 years from now. And so I'm reminded to try to find the freedom there, because I mean, I have a traumatic background, and I've spent most of my life very cerebral and probably very, people call it empathic, but what it is you're very attuned to other human beings and environment because you've needed to be. And so you've developed that skill. I've worked in mediumship and intuitive guidance, etc., all the things, all the things. And I'm very sensitive. I've spent a lot of my life sort of not really in my body. And it's been at times wonderful, and maybe more of the time very extremely difficult. And I'm looking at death practices, death tradition, death industry, the whole vertical and horizontal, the 360 of it, as perhaps sort of a second or third act career option. But I'm recognizing that for me, the discipline is going to be to use it as an actual embodiment practice, to examine death as an embodiment practice, as opposed to a leaving the body practice. It's for me, it's going to be a very grounded kind of thing. And I'm wondering, I'm thinking, I'm actually contacting prior meditation students and asking them, hey, remember when we used to do that? And I led that. And, do you think I was helping you be more embodied, or was I taking you out of your body? Like, I'm really asking these questions, and I'm trying to find some comfort in and some wisdom in, does it matter? Like, because life is the tension between the two. And I suppose death is just one, it's a pause on, there's a transformation there, but it's the same tension between the two state. It's just a different state. Little heady. I'm a little heady. I don't know. Somebody else can, should I pass to somebody else now? And T, am I saying your name correctly? I think you have a comment that's bubbling up.
Yeah, I'm very expressive. Thanks for sharing. That's like beautiful work. And I think that, just the one thing that really resonates with me is that the being able to be flexible, that there's a choice, because having had different meditation experiences, I started out with Vipassana, which is very like strict, and then you have mantras and visualizations. And I think just in life, like I think we focus a lot on like landing at the right place because of like how our society is formed, is like, it's not about how we get to the place, it's the place. And I think once we realize that there's a lot of choices and how we relate to our lives and our bodies and our spirits, it kind of becomes irrelevant, like the conclusion you come to. It's the fact that you have different choices that is the conclusion. And And so I think just being able to have a mind and a heart that's like flexible with changing your mind. You know, I used to be like, my favorite color is yellow since I was 5 years old. And it's that because I'm committed. And I think that like now I'm committed to like changing my mind. You know, tomorrow I might think something different than I think today. And I think it's just the humility in the face of a life that always has something to teach us. And as far as like those strong sensations that you were talking about, Andrea, is just like learning how to like try different things when those happen. And I've tried letting that entire sensation embody me. And sometimes that helps because it just kind of discharges and goes away. And sometimes I've tried to imagine that it's just this little plastic bottle in an ocean. And I don't have one that works consistently each time. It just is, it's different each time. And I think the one thing that does work is kindness. Like when I don't treat my experience as a problem, when I respect my experience, because I think emotions are inherently incredibly intelligent. And when we try to create a narrative around them, then that starts to muddle a lot. So yeah, thanks for sharing, Cami. That's so much there. I'm curious if Shelley, did you have anything you wanted to add to? You're always so insightful. I think you're muted. I just sent you a request to
Yeah,
unmute. You might see
I
it.
got
Okay.
it. It's just my icon. I need to change it, but I don't have the patience. It's funny, I'm listening to all of you and thinking, wow, I mean, you're very deeply educated in these areas. I'm kind of lost. I'm hearing what you're saying and realizing there's a whole nother part I haven't considered. You know, Daniel, have never considered the fact that I would come back to this world in another body or otherwise, never even given it a thought. I'm just going up there and I'm staying up there and I'm partying with my friends. So, but see, I have a much more simplistic and uneducated view of it. It's not that I think I'm less than, but your deeper understanding is very interesting to me. Very. I mean, you're so much more in touch with your feelings than I am. I know how I feel, but I never talk about, rarely. Wonder what Don would say if he was here. But anyway, I just don't think that I'm as in touch with myself as you are, all of you, most of you. Nope, that's all. It's what you saw in my face, and you're like, wow.
I'll pipe in. Obviously, I don't know for a fact that you may be coming back in another body. These are just, my own, where I've come to on my own path, and everybody is, on their own journey of discovery as to who they are. I put my little comment in about sort of encouraging folks to, look inside, like you've talked about, and he's talking about, like, I like the color yellow. Like that's an excellent example of like an identification marker that we use to define who we are that really is completely mutable, completely changeable, and completely going to go away when we, when we release this physical form to go on to whatever is next. And it's sort of interesting to see that, like, sort of like be able to identify those things within ourselves and sort of honor the truth that like feelings are. Like that was a great comment. Feelings are very much a way of receiving communication, and being, in touch with that is like I use those, like, again, that sort of requires an awareness, ability to step back and everything like that. But listening to what your body says is fantastic. Who else? Stacy, would you like to comment on anything that?
Sure. Gosh, just listening to everybody. I mean, I've always wanted to put this into practice, and some things I do. Newly diagnosed with ADHD and getting overwhelmed. And I, like Andrea, I'm a very emotional person. Everyone is very much aware of that because I'm not afraid to express what's going on and how I'm feeling at the time. Getting overwhelming more so lately, and trying to wrap my head around that has proven to be difficult, because it's it's a very, like, the most forefront feeling for me right now. And trying to get that mindset, you know, to become more balanced. So the attachments to my thoughts, and being able to say, okay, yeah, I have these thoughts and I have these feelings, and it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, and I shouldn't be afraid to express that out of, you know, fear of, like, oh, what do you have to be overwhelmed about? Oh, you've got this. You don't have to feel overwhelmed. It's okay, you know. No, I'm overwhelmed, guys. You know, I get it. It's easy to say this, but hello, you know. And then whenever it comes, like Cami talking about being in tune with yourself, you know, and mediumship and things like that, that's definitely um things I have worked on as well. And that has helped a lot to help clear my mind, and in getting myself into those spaces where I can allow myself to be on that kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like other plane or whatnot, but um that has helped me out a whole lot. But it's, I just like having the conversation, you know, about it, that I guess just about things that people don't really like to talk about, um because there shouldn't be like the stigma around it, any of it that we've talked about today. And um I'm just glad to be a part of the conversation today. Like, that's my 2 cents. And I know I went off at a tangent, and that's because of the ADHD, but thank you guys.
I think that was wonderful, Stacy, and not a tangent. And I'd like to add, because I really want to commend you on the work you're doing. The awareness that, like, wow, I'm overwhelmed, and even the awareness of being overwhelmed is overwhelming. That's real, and that's a big piece of the practice. And something that's been helpful for me, and I think in general, is I am where I am, and that's okay. It is actually, if you're overwhelmed, it's okay. It is okay to have these feelings, to be in these spaces. We don't necessarily want to unpack and move in there forever, but we are human beings, and we are going to move through a lot of different things. And I found that I am where I am, and that's okay, has been a really powerful sentence for me, because, you know, it's true. Sometimes people feel uncomfortable by our uncomfortable emotions. And you know what? That, hey, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Like, that's, I think, you know, a big part of our issue with our culture. We're not comfortable talking about death. We're not comfortable with big emotions. So, you know, being I am where I am, and that's okay, I think can be a pretty powerful practice to go along with the observer, just to know that it is okay to feel overwhelmed, sad. I had to go lie down in the fetal position on the sheepskin where my dog died. Like, I had to do that, and it was okay. It was messy. Like, it was definitely a messy emotional moment, but it was okay. And it made me feel better in the end to just do that. So I want to encourage you to just keep going. It sounds like you're doing an amazing job navigating this new space for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. We're coming up on an hour now. Esther, I see you just arrived. We changed our
hi.
clocks last weekend. I know you didn't change them until next weekend. I didn't even think about that. So we are wrapping. Well, I was gonna say we're coming up on an hour now. I'm gonna bring up the slides from the beginning, but we're not gonna spend too much time on it because we're running out of time. I'm sorry, Esther. I completely.
No, that's fine.
Because I'm aware that, yeah, we changed last weekend and you don't change till next weekend, and the fact that this meeting fell in between kind of escaped my mind, so I apologize for that. Anyway, where's the slides? Let me share my screen again, and we'll just have a quick return to this, and if anybody wants to say anything, we can discuss them again. So this is all, we're back to what we started with. Again, I put a little comment in the chat about the who are you, like that's sort of the reason I had that question first, and sort of with the observer self, the stuff that I've discussed, that's really the one that I wanted to drive home with this, and the fact that we are oftentimes not who we think we are. We are not all the things that we use to identify ourselves with. We are not our name. We are not our job. We are not our body. We are something far more subtle and beautiful than that. And that, like, saying that is a very intellectual practice, but really embodying that and feeling that is the work that we all get to do individually if we choose to do so. But there is benefits. So that's my my comments. Does anybody have anything that they would like to bring back up, anything that shifted in the last hour that we've been talking about this stuff? And I'm not going to popcorn. I'm just going to throw it out for whoever wants to say something, just because we are at an hour already anyway. So
I have a question. How does one navigate, or if you have resources, please, by all means, I'll put my email in the chat if anyone has any idea, because I feel like this would be something that maybe any of you have maybe gone through before, but the role of daughter becoming the caretaker for mother, that I see that in my life as my role starting to, and part of my being overwhelmed, my role starting to shift into becoming the caretaker, as opposed to it being vice versa. It's something very new to me, and it's becoming more prevalent. So if anyone has any ideas, resources, comments on that, I would be forever grateful, because that is kind of like me starting to live in her life. Kind of one of the questions that I kind of equal that to at the moment. Yeah.
I certainly have some pretty hardcore experience with that myself and my mother. All of us doulas here, I think, are well equipped for that. If you would like to maybe have a 15-minute call with us, Stacy, we do offer a complimentary 15-minute call just to see if that's something that would help, and if it's something you would want to continue to do. We offer sliding scale. We offer a lot of things, and we can also just have conversation via email if that feels more comfortable, but we do have support for you here. Oh, thank you, Shelley.
yeah, thank you.
We wouldn't be here without you guys. Or we would, but it would just be us.
It'd be a much less interesting conversation without all of you here, for sure. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. We will start wrapping this up. Thank you all for being here today. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you, as it always is. I enjoy talking about this stuff. I'm glad that you do as well, that you choose to be here. It's nice that we're able to meet like this and have these conversations, and then take what we learn and the energy from these out into our lives and share that in whatever way makes the most sense for us. Like, obviously we may not be having as explicit conversations about death and dying in our casual day-to-day life, but certainly the fact that we're doing this now will permeate us and will be projected as we move through our lives. So I appreciate you being here. Andrea, do you have anything that you would like to follow up with?
Yeah, just a couple things. And what you were saying, I think that by us having this conversation, it creates a ripple. Every time we have these conversations, it creates a ripple that can move outward, that maybe one person has a conversation about death and dying outside of this. So Shelley, you're going to do that this evening, and that's amazing. And I hope when we see you at the next salon, you can share with us about that, because it's what you're doing is incredible. It's really hard to get people to do it actually. So I really, I just think it's a really wonderful ripple every time we do this. Also just some general VDDN stuff. We recently created some, packages for grief and death anxiety support. We offer 3-session and 5-session packages, and those packages are at a discounted rate. So that's something that you can find on our website. You can book it with one doula, but if you wanted to see all 3 of us, whatever it is, we can make that happen. So I just wanted to let you know that we now offer grief support packages at a discount. And we are always grateful for your support in attending these salons and helping us create the ripples that will keep going.
All right, I think that's it.
Shelley, did you have something? No, okay.
Fantastic. Thank you all for coming. I know we went a little bit over, but I appreciate you sticking around for a few extra minutes and everything like that. Glad you took the time to be here again, and have a fantastic rest of your Saturday, rest of your weekend, rest of your life. Keep living large and dying large too. We're all, nobody gets out alive. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.